Welcome to My New Life Online. I'm Anita Cochran with Steve Wyckoff once again. Hi.
Good morning.
I had nothing for you.
Yeah.
Oh well. We're going to talk today about the changing face of education, and we're not talking about this guy's face.
Right.
Although over the years it's changed as he's been involved in education.
A lot of years, yeah.
And he's constantly talking about how things have changed. We must learn versus classes, blah, 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 blah. But we're going to go into more detail today.
I'd like to think it's not blah, 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 but
Yes,
yeah.
it is.
We have a couple of exceptional guests today.
I know,
Exceptional.
I'm kind of an
Big
excited.
shots.
Yeah. Well, okay, but let's go through the hierarchy of education.
Okay.
Because dummies like me who have kids in school go, okay, I have my teachers, I have my principals, and I have a superintendent, and I don't really know who's up here.
Well, up here, you have a commissioner of education. That's kind of the chief of all of education in the state of Kansas. Alexa Posney is our commissioner. Right below her is a deputy commissioner, Diane DeBacker. Dr. DeBacker is with us today. And right at that next level are directors. And we have a former director, Dr. Bill Hagerman, who's now a superintendent. So you kind of see how that works.
And basically, they watch over, sort of godlike, and make sure that we're getting our people to where they need to be to have a happy, good, productive life.
And Diane's more godly than Bill, but we'll see that here in a minute.
Yes, we will. Just want to say thank you to Mead's Corner. You'll notice they're not really here. So I'm sipping water out of my A cup. Stands for Anita. Somebody actually asked me that. I'm like, duh. Yeah. But anyway, typically we're like caffeinated. This time?
No caffeine.
We're not, but Mead's Corner is our typical sponsor, and he'll be back next time with all kinds of drinks. And the great part about it, the reason we needed to mention it, is anytime you go to Mead's Corner, which do you want to tell them where it's at?
Emporia and Douglas.
Okay. Tell them you saw My New Life, Anita, Steve, whatever you want to say, and you're going to get a 10% discount.
Every time.
Because breaking news, I'm broke, and sometimes you are too.
Always, yeah.
So every little bit helps, and when you drink as much as we do, it really adds up. We have a few more people to thank for helping us help you find My New Life. So let's do that, and we'll be right back. My New Life Online has some very distinguished guests. He refers to them as godlike, and I probably will too, just as soon as we hear from them. But these are the folks. We want to welcome Dr. Diane DeBacker and Bill Hagerman, who are overseeing in our Kansas government the educations that our children receive up to 12th grade. And basically, for most kids, sometimes that's it. So it's very important. And Steve has been the one preaching over here how education has changed. If we're going to live in this new society, we have to educate our kids differently. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? So,
well, you know, we've had several guests over the last few episodes from basically post-secondary, kids that have left high school, but they're talking about a very different career preparation than we've had in the past. And today we're going to talk with Bill and Diane about, so what's going on in K-12 education? Where are we going with that to prepare those kids for that different post-secondary education?
So the question is, and let's start with you, Diane, is he right? Have things changed?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
How so?
Well, it's not the same as when you and I were in school. I have no idea how old you are.
Old enough.
I would guess that you were in school a few years ago. But today's schooling is so integrated, and it's no longer just math and science and English and social studies. Everything is brought together.
But I get my kid's report card, and it still looks just like our report card did.
You're right. That's part of the problem. I mean, not that we have a problem,
Right.
But we have been. You bring up a very good example of report cards because that is what parents see, and that's what they expect. To change that culture takes a lot because. Really, kids are very flexible and they'll change and they're ready to change. It's usually us, the adults, that have a harder time changing, and report cards is a great example.
Okay, I want to say, what's her dream? I can see in her head she has this dream of education. What would your education look like if we could start over, poof, and I had no expectations?
She is the god of education.
I know.
Yeah, right. No, I am not the god. Alexa Posney is the god of education.
You're assistant god. Deputy God.
It's a good place to be. Tell me the dream.
I have a job. I have a job. The dream is that every child gets the very best education and is prepared to be successful in whatever they choose to do, whether they're going to work, whether they're going into the military, whether they're going on to college, whether they're starting their own business, is that they have the tools, that we have prepared them through their K through 12 education to have the tools to be successful. And successful is anybody's definition, and there's not one definition of it.
Well, I'm just sitting here going, wow, that's a bigger job than I thought, because military, work life, whatever, all those options need different kinds of education. So how can you one size fits all?
Well, I'm going to actually send that one to Bill.
Oh, good.
Because he is,
welcome, Bill.
He's the visionary. He really is. Bill and I have worked together since 2003, and we have a pretty good relationship in terms of that he thinks really big. And at times I actually look at him and say, just bring it down to simple terms, because he's a big thinker and I'm kind of the pragmatic one and can bring us on task. So.
Okay. So how do we do that with, you have all these kids and they all are going to need different things. How are they all going to get what they need?
Well, I think, again, back to Diane's point, it's fundamentally each child's education that matters, and we have to start with that vision that your child, Steve's child, my child, Diane's children, all of them matter. And it's important that we do consider each one of them as an individual and not try to massify education as we've done. So one size does not fit all. So how do you operationalize that? And I think that's really the question you're getting to. I think that we start with, as they begin to go through the system, it's essential that they can read. And it's essential that they're fluent in reading and math and all of those kinds of foundational things. We can't ignore that, and that is not going to change. From that point on, we begin to build plans for each student. This is where we haven't been so good about that. We have done all these curricular areas, as Diane pointed out, reading, math, social studies, and so on, pretty much in isolation. But by having them be more integrated into a system of education that has a purpose at the end. Why do I want to know this, and when am I ever going to use this, is the second question a high school kid will tell you when you ask them about their education. And the first one is typically, it's boring. And I don't think boring is a good outcome.
Can we say that?
But they don't say boring about K through 5.
Yes.
School's exciting. It's really when you get to about 7th grade, 8th grade, and especially in high school, that it becomes boring.
And why is that?
So what do we do? What is happening in schools that all of a sudden schooling is boring to kids who are a little bit older?
Why do you think it becomes boring at that age?
I think in many cases we don't make it relevant. And if you think about our education system and the way that it's set up, and it's not Kansas's fault, it's nobody's fault, but you look at it across the country, it's really set up for convenience. We are set up, think about your kids' classrooms. They're probably sitting in rows, right? Have you been to their classroom yet this year? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are the desks in rows?
I'm a good mom. Actually, some are and some aren't. My kids go to Mays South Middle School. It's a brand new school. And some of them set them up in pods.
Right.
So each classroom I went into was a little bit different. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Aren't they going to lean over and talk? Because that's what I would have done.
And that's exactly the point, is it seems weird to all of the adults again. We're back to that issue that Diane pointed out. Kids adapt to this kind of a learning environment that gets back to your question about how do we change this and how do we think differently about this. It's by very much grouping kids in a different way to think differently about the whole delivery model. And the purpose and the relevance that Diane pointed out is a step in that direction to get us to the point where we can say, this is where I'm going, and this is why I'm going there, and this is what I want to have when I get there. It doesn't mean they can't change their mind. It doesn't mean that they won't. It doesn't mean that they may not end up in that career or whatever. But kids the research is very clear about this. Kids that go through high school and have a plan for where they want to go and what they want to accomplish when they get there are way more likely to succeed in that, and they may change their mind, but they're much more likely to succeed and persist through high school and through the post-secondary system, which, by the way, is, in my opinion, post-secondary doesn't mean college for everyone. It means post-secondary education, ongoing learning. You are not going to avoid continuing learning when you get out of high school. It's not possible today to have enough to be able to not continue your learning. That means some kind of training, some kind of additional learning that is ongoing. And so the preparation that Diane pointed out